I'm going to make a few very narrow, very specific observations today. And one of them is just about the unchurched, in our culture. St. Charles County, for example. It will look very specifically at our corner of the harvest field. St. Charles County has about 60% of the people here do not have a church home. They do not have a church that they regularly attend or a pastor that they can call or rely on or have any connection to. And that's up from 50% 10 years ago. That means that our county and the people around us, they're becoming more unchurched and even more without this spiritual direction and spiritual leadership. And that's in keeping with the national trends, right? Across the country, church membership is way down. Church attendance is way down. More and more people in our culture are becoming religiously unaffiliated. And so with that in mind, let me ask you this. What is it that you feel in your heart when you think about those who are unchurched, who are far from God? When you think about those who are not Christian, if you were to put on your hard hat and grab a flashlight and go deep within your heart, what would you find there? Would you find Christ-like compassion? Or would you find contempt? Would you find an arrogance? Would you run into the idea that I'm better than they are and they need to get their act together? I think that if you were to put on a hard hat and travel deep within my own heart, I think sometimes when I think about the unchurched, you might find frustration and maybe even a hint of self-righteousness. Not always the Christ-like compassion, the kind of care and concern that he displays here for those who are like sheep without a shepherd, for those who are harassed and helpless and vulnerable to the many attacks of our culture. We have compassion for them. And what do those emotions that we have in our heart, what do they lead us to do? To roll our eyes about them, wag our finger, and say, these people are all headed for hell in a handbasket? Or should we, like Jesus suggests here, take a moment to pray for them? Jesus then said to his disciples in verse 37, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." That's what Christ-like compassion leads us to do, to pray for people. When we see so many people in this world who need Jesus, pray for them. Pray that a worker or a servant or someone bringing the gospel would go to them and tell them about Jesus so that they might believe and be saved. The harvest is plentiful, but there simply aren't enough workers. Again, I'm going to make a very narrow application here, looking just at the work of the harvest that God has given to our church body, for example. Across our network of churches, we have about 1,100 congregations, and if they were all to be fully staffed, we would need 1,400 pastors to do the work in those 1,100 congregations. And at present time, we have about 1,300 pastors, which means we're 100 short. That we have a pastor shortage right now. And that is consistent across most denominations. The Barna Group and Pew Research Center, they've published reports showing that there are congregations and churches across America that are reporting a pastor shortage or longer vacancies between pastors. And this can be due to a number of different factors. For one thing, pastors many are getting older and retiring at a higher rate. Many are resigning at a higher rate because of burnout and other factors. And young people just simply don't seem to be interested in going into the ministry as much as they were a generation or two ago. Here's the thing. Jesus already knew that this problem was going to happen, that we would face this challenge. Long before the Barna Group or the Pew Research Center published their reports, Jesus knew what the problem was. And he already told us what to do about it. He said to pray. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest field. Pray for them. Make that a regular part of your prayer life. Pray that young people would consider becoming pastors. Pray for those who are unchurched, that they might have the opportunity to hear the gospel by a pastor or a teacher or a missionary who is sent to them, or even just a Christian friend bringing the gospel to them and doing their work in the harvest field.